But with the relationship that I was in, it was a very controlled. As soon as I left, I became a men's advocate, a men's rights advocate right after I left. And whether it be with a man or a woman, because people often say, "Oh, if you're just going with a woman, you're safe." That's not the case anymore. And if you're relying on an outside influences to sort of give you a false boost, that's only going to last so long. In general, the man is going to be the one to lead. And in order for him to be the leader in the relationship, the woman needs to be in her feminine.
Influencer Insight shares the battles, stories, success of the models, influencers, and entrepreneurs as they find the balance of being influential leaders today while creating long-lasting impact for the future. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another session of Influencer Insights, where I have Celina Epp from Duck Lake, or Saskatoon, both in Saskatchewan, both in the northwest part of the province, but we're really glad to have Celina here. She's a intimacy coach, but she's also a model, and she's been doing that for 5, 6, 7 years, someplace in there. So we're glad to have you on the podcast tonight. Celina, I know you had some things that you kind of wanted to share and some things you've seen going on in the industry, and you'd like to talk about a little bit of that tonight. So appreciate that, and welcome.
Thank you, Ben. This is great to be on here. I love the fact that we get to have this conversation and sort of explore all of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah,
awesome. Would you give us just a little bit of a elevator pitch of you? I've done some introduction, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got started modeling and how you do coaching and all that kind of stuff.
So my name is Celina, and I have been doing modeling for, I guess, just about 5 years now, 5 or 6 years. And I really started getting into it in 2018 after my relationship of 17 years ended. And basically it was just a matter of, I've been following my dreams. This is something I'd been wanting to do for many years. But with the relationship that I was in, it was a very controlled, very tight, manipulative, sort of under a very tiny microscope. Yes, yeah. Thank you. I like to stay away from like the that
negative, super deep.
Everybody calls their ex a narcissist, right? So, but yeah, so it was not a great relationship. So after that is when I was able to like sort of, become like a butterfly, right? And just be able to spread my wings, do all the things I wanted to do. So I sort of got into modeling with a friend of mine, and we just shot a few things. And then from there I was like, man, I got the taste of it, and I absolutely loved it. Because for me, it was more about like just, it's not about like looking pretty in front of a camera. It's about being able to embody different parts of you. And we all carry different pieces of ourselves, different parts of our personality. And how often are we able to really be able to express that in an artistic, creative way? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I was really able to like dig into all parts of myself. So what I found out doing this was that it would really help me to do my healing process, help me to learn more about myself, where my boundaries are, all kinds of things. So I absolutely loved it because of that. And basically what I have been doing for the last 25 years is, as a holistic practitioner, is energy work, like lots of different modalities within that space. And so over these 5 years, as soon as I left, I became a men's advocate, a men's rights advocate right after I left. So that sort of led me to...
Seems almost kind of counterproductive at the end of a relationship, right?
I get that all the time. I honestly get that all the time. But the reason that I sort of went into that area was because when I left my relationship, I had checked out a while before I actually physically left.
Sure.
And I was doing a lot of processing of this information, and it was just a matter of like, what's the actual date that I'm leaving? So kind of getting my ducks in a row. And what I was really understanding, or really starting to sort of have more of an awareness of, is where my ex was coming from. So it allowed me to sort of step out of it and look at it from a bird's eye view, and just not take it personal, but just sort of look at a different perspective and say, hey, you know what? This is the cycle that's been going on. This is what he's been involved in since his childhood, and his, family before him. And we have 2 boys. So it was so important to me to say, hey, you know what? If you're not going to do it, I am.
Hey models, thanks for tuning in today. Hope that you're enjoying the episode. It's Ben here. I just wanted to invite you to the Influencer and Model Support Group on Facebook, where we've got a great growing community of people looking to help, support, share tips and tricks on how to grow, become, and develop as a model. So go on Facebook, Type in search influencer and model support group, and you'll find us. Click join, you'll be added in, and you're going to find a great community of people too.
If you're not going to do it, I am going to. And we're changing the cycle right now. We're breaking it right now. We're going to have some new awarenesses, new narrative, and new cycles being brought in. Even if it's one-sided, that was my purpose, is to say, hey, you know what? There's a lot of men out there who need help. There's a lot of men out there who are not receiving the resources that they need. So I just sort of dug in, and my main goal at the end of the day, every day, is my boys, and knowing that when I'm teaching people, when I'm coaching people on, I'm also giving that same information to my boys
Right.
at the ages that they're at, right, is whatever they can comprehend, but I'm still very much teaching them about all of those things. So, and as I'm going along, all of the things that I'm talking about, it leads me into these little rabbit holes that end up being more teaching and more healing for myself. So well-rounded, sort of like everything is kind of coming together full circle, and it's sort of filling the purpose that is that's what I'm here for. So I've been loving it, absolutely loving it. So yeah,
I like that a lot. We're going to talk a little bit more about the coach and your program and that sort of thing. Jumping back to the modeling for a second, you had a friend that they also want to become a model, or were they a model already when you guys decided to go do a couple of shoots? Or
no, actually, he had done. He's more like a hobby photography.
Oh, cool.
Person, and he does, like, he was doing weddings and he was doing like engagement photos, and he loved the creative part of it. He never really wanted to be a professional photographer, like, as his whole thing, but he just loved the creative aspect of it. And he asked me if I was interested in doing some shots, and I said yeah. And we just had fun and created some stuff. And yeah, so it was a nice sort of way to lead into it, knowing that there was somebody that you felt comfortable and safe with. So that was really cool.
What was the progression like? Where did you go from there? Was it just more TFP kind of shoots, or did you get some book work at some point? Or
from there, I would answer modeling calls and things like that. And I always did freelance. I had signed up with Numa, and I did that for about a year. And I didn't like the restrictions that were kind of placed on me, as far as, like, I mean, I didn't have the time and the opportunity to travel as much with like a toddler and being a single mom. So freelance was my thing. And I just basically went wherever, if I was able to do a booking here and there. I did a little bit of runway and a couple odd things here and there. And it suited me, and it filled me to what I needed to. And from there, I basically just answer the calls that fit me more so than being, you're what I'm looking for. It's like, no, are you what I'm looking for? So so that's
those
kind
are the
of
best, though, right? Because then
it's more genuine, and it's more fits my purpose for what I want. So
what are some really cool shoots that you got to do, or a really cool place you got to go doing the modeling thing?
I was doing a lot of traveling pre-COVID, I guess, would have been,
as everybody.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a general idea. But yeah, I'd done a lot of work with a Métis and Indigenous group. I was actually part of a board. And so with that, I had done a lot of traveling. So I would go down to Ottawa quite a bit. And basically, I would just like connect with different photographers wherever I went, Montreal, Ottawa, any other places that I went. So one of the really cool places that I did shoot was at the Ottawa Art Museum. It was so beautiful. It was just so cool there. And the photographer was just very, had just a very unique view on the space, and shooting me in that space. It was very different. And I loved it. And we actually met a few times and did different shots in Ottawa, in that area. So,
there's some history in that part of the world that we probably don't get to see quite as much in the prairies yet either, right?
That's true.
Was it difficult to connect with people traveling across the country, or did you just reach out to people on Facebook, or what did you do?
Just Instagram. Basically, I would just, like, I knew whatever, and I love traveling. I'm very much a nomadic, personality. So I love to travel and just sort of pick up and go wherever. So if I knew I was going anywhere in particular, whether it be just a road trip for myself or for work or whatever, I would just, check on Instagram who was in the area and follow certain photographers if I liked their work. And then we would just sort of connect. And if I liked their work and they liked my work, then we would connect, and it always worked out really well. So
what do you do to, traveling is always, it's fun, but there's obviously a level of safety you need to be cautious of, especially if you're traveling alone. What are some of the safety mitigations and stuff you would have used to stay safe when you go around?
So basically, I mean, aside from modeling, I travel a lot and mostly by myself, and because the work that I do, I can do it wherever. I don't need to be in a specific location, or like my practice, I can go anywhere with it.
Yeah.
So even whether it be, like I say, modeling or doing my coaching or a massage, I always, what I had been doing when I had a partner is I would share my location, do the location sharing and on Google Maps, and let them know ahead of time who I was going with, what their contact information was, make sure that they had their Instagram handle, Facebook handle, the whole thing, so that they knew where I was going. And whether it be with a man or a woman, because people often say, "Oh, if you're just going with a woman, you're safe." That's not the case anymore, because there's so many times where it's like women are perpetrators just as much as men, right? I mean, they will either lead you in, and there's all kinds of different scenarios where it's not safe. So it's just a matter of just keeping certain guidelines that this is just what you do, right? So you let somebody know where you're going, do your location sharing, make sure everybody knows where you're going, where you're staying, when you're coming back, and communicate while you're there. And it's not a matter of like being dependent on anybody. It's just a matter of just being safe and responsible, and being, just a level of security and comfort for yourself.
Well, common sense when you're planning things out like that. I think, to be honest, you're probably the first person. I know everybody says to, bring a friend or tell your mom where you go or whatever, but you're probably the first person that's talked about sharing location and stuff since I've started this podcast. So
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Seems weird, pretty basic, but something that we forget about, right? But that's a really great tip, and I think something that people will take home, because and
it's so easy.
Don't care who you are. So easy. So cool. No,
you just turn it on and off whenever you like, and nobody's tracking you.
Well, that's the other side too, right? Don't want to be followed home either, right? So cool. Have you got to meet some pretty cool people and stuff shooting, like photographers obviously, but some, I don't know, client work or other models and that kind of thing in your travels?
You know what? I was having this conversation with a client actually a couple of days ago. I absolutely love, like, just wherever I go, and it doesn't matter what it is that I'm doing, I love meeting new people. I love, like, whether it be on the airplane or if you're, waiting in line somewhere, I will just talk to anybody. And I love that part of it. So I think the biggest thing is for me is being able to meet all these different people and getting to hear their stories. So I've met a lot of really great models, photographers, and just people along the way, whether it be like just, like I said, just waiting in line at the airport or something like that. Just some really cool people, and not always great people, unfortunately. There's always some people out there who, there's been other, I've had my issues, I guess, with other models, just not being in it for the right reason, possibly, or having some other issues. And then also some photographers I've had, and there's nothing wrong with being a hobby photographer, but again, it's sometimes when people are in it for the wrong reasons, it becomes evident in their work, sometimes in their approach. And once you're in, if you've never been in modeling before, just like when I first started, I learned all my lessons very early on, because I was just throwing myself into all of these things and not realizing that there's, just because you have a camera doesn't make you a photographer. And just because you have a website, just because you have a website, you've got a business card and all those other things, doesn't necessarily mean you're a professional. It doesn't mean you're safe, and doesn't mean that you are legit. So I've learned my lessons along the way. And I think the biggest thing I can say is, if you are getting into modeling, is the biggest thing is to learn what your boundaries are. And I think that's just a good general thing,
rule
whether
life,
it be for anything, right? Relationships and whatnot, is just to make sure that you know what your boundaries are, what you're willing to do, not willing to do, communicate that. And I think there's so many people who just are afraid of, like, well, this is, they want me to do this, so I guess I have to do this. Well, you don't. It doesn't matter if it's a paid work or not. If you don't have a contract stating that these are the things that you are doing and are not doing, then you don't have to abide by it. You can leave at any point. You can ask questions. And if somebody doesn't want you to bring a friend with them to a shoot, that's a red flag. There's just certain things, right? I mean, you wouldn't go on a date with somebody that you've never met before, and you're not going to tell anybody where you're going. You're not going to have them take you home, like all of those things, right? I mean, and if you do, whatever, no shade, but it's just a matter of like you say, common sense, and just really understanding who you are and being able to communicate that and being able to stand strong in that and say, hey, you know what? No.
That's right.
And not be afraid to say no and not having to explain why. It's just no is a full sentence.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Period.
Period.
There's lots of, I can't remember who I was listening to talking about interviewing in the modeling industry, and they're like people don't realize how big the industry is worldwide, because it far surpasses music, acting, all of that stuff combined, actually, because there's so many different models needed. So there's always opportunities out there for people, and don't do stuff you're not comfortable with, right?
Because what you're doing is you're setting a standard, right? Just like with a relationship, it's like whatever you settle for, it's like you can't go higher than that, because people are going to now say, okay, well, that you're okay with these things, you're comfortable with these things, and you have the ability to change. You have the ability to do differently and ask for what you want. And if you're not comfortable, express it.
Is what it is.
Right? Yeah. So
what are some of the, you probably know this from the relationship coaching as much as anything, but applying it to modeling, what are some of the right reasons you've seen that people get into it, or maybe some of the reasons they shouldn't get into it?
I think for a lot of people, what I have seen is they are looking to get into modeling because they want to show a diversity of bodies in social media. Because I mean, that social media, as much as we want to, talk down about it. That's it. We're all on social media to some degree. We all use social media, so we're influenced by that daily. So if you are looking at something, if you're looking at ads or anything like that, where you're always seeing one type of body or one skin color, skin type, hair color, hair type, any of those things, size, shape, whatever. And if you're always inundated with the same stuff, lots of models are wanting to say, hey, you know what? I look different. I look different. My hair is different, all of those different things. I have tattoos, all of these things. So a lot of people want to get into it because of that, right? Just to show some diversity. And I know for myself, I mean, like I said, I always wanted to be a model growing up. And I always remember my mom saying, you're 5'1", like you're not, you're not going to be a model, right?
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I'm 48 now, but I mean, like when I was growing up, that was a long time ago, so, and being 5'1", being a Métis girl, from a small town, Saskatchewan, your dreams were not really supported very much, and saying, hey, yeah, you can be these things, right? You must look like Kate Moss or Linda Evangelista, right? Like all of those names from then, you had to fill these requirements. And now I think that there's so much diversity and people crave that, right? They want to know if you've got, skin pigmentation, if you've got tattoos, if you've got piercings, you've got different hair, eye color, different abilities in your body, whether it be an amputee or whatever, all of those things, there's places for all of that. So I think that that's a big part of why somebody wants to show up. And not necessarily make it be like just, walking down the runway as a Victoria's Secret model. It's about, hey, you know what? There's some different things about me I really fucking love. And I want to show it. I want to show it to that, 12-year-old little girl who I was when, how many years ago, that I want people to see that it is possible. And I think a lot of people also get into it for the wrong reasons, which is maybe a false sense of belonging. And not to say that you can't belong, but if you're not in a good mental health space, if you're not in a good space in who you are, and if you're relying on an outside influences to sort of give you a false boost, that's only going to last so long. It's not going to, it's just the facade wears off after a while. I mean, you can only post so many cute photos on Instagram and have people say, oh my God, you're so beautiful. And then eventually it's just like, okay, but what else is there?
Yeah.
Right? It's snoozeville, right? I mean, to me at this point, it's like if somebody says, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful," DM me. I'm just like, delete, delete, delete. Delete. I don't care. Like, I mean, if that's all that you have, if that's all that you're going to give me, and you haven't done the work to say, hey, you know what? She's a really fucking interesting woman. She's got a lot of shit going for her, right? And if you can't compliment that, then I'm not interested.
Talk about the other things.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people get into it because they think, oh my God, this is going to boost my confidence. I'm going to be really pretty. I'm going to get lots of attention. Yeah, you will probably, but modeling is also about like what is it doing for you? What piece is it filling for you? Right. And if you're not clear on that, then it's just like with anything else, just like, when I talk about, self-intimacy and getting to know yourself, if you don't know who you are as a person, you bet your ass somebody's going to come along and tell you real quick who you are and where your standards are.
That's right.
Because if it's not filled, somebody's going to fill it for you. And then it's going to be that all of a sudden you're going to get so far away from the core of who you are. And now you're all of a sudden playing this role of somebody that it's not really who you are. It's not really your passion. Right. So get really clear on what it is you're doing. Are you there to help people? Are you there to do some healing for yourself? Are you just there as a job to make money? Whatever it is, right? Just and no shade on anything. Just be clear on what it is. That's all.
Well, that's good. So, I like that, getting into that identity piece. One thing that kind of struck me, and I've got a friend who's out in LA. We were kind of conversing. I was like, I went to this audition and I realized it's so weird because all of a sudden they give you a little number and a card and you stick it on you. And all of a sudden I'm not Ben anymore. I'm model 401, right? And you go through the audition piece, right? And you lose your identity that way. And he said, what's even weirder is like when you go to LA and you want to go to a casting. So they do the same thing. They give you a number, but you'll walk in the room and you'll find 50 people that look exactly like you. He's like, it's the weirdest thing. It's like, there's people. And I think that's something that people don't always realize. They think they see the supermodel who's spent the time developing themselves and growing, standing on the big stage with their nameplate, right? But they don't realize how many days they had to sit crying in the corner, right? Because they were one of 50 other people that were looking for the same job, right? And I think that kind of goes back to where you're saying with the identity piece. What are you doing this for? If you don't have a higher purpose other than just me, right? You're gonna run out of gas. So
yeah, exactly. And I've seen that too. Like I've seen that where it's like they're looking for a certain look, and if you happen to fit that look, I could walk in the same room too and be like, oh my God, there's like 50 other 5'1" brunettes, right?
Yep. Nothing wrong with any of you. You all look great, but they've got to pick somebody, and if you don't fit that, if you're 5'6", you're out of luck, right? So
Exactly.
Generally in this part, I kind of talk about things that people don't know about you, but I think maybe I'd like to jump back to talking about your relationship a little bit. 17 years and things kind of went sideways, or however that works. Somebody that's going through that, what are some of those experiences that people would be, what's some hope, I guess, going through that kind of stuff?
I think for myself, when I was in that relationship, it's so funny because it's like that saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. And I remember I use this analogy a lot when I'm talking to my clients. It's like I would be sitting on the couch and watching like a movie, or say like CSI or something like that, where we are watching this like abusive relationship, the dynamics happening, and you're thinking to yourself like, shit, there's no way. If that were me, I would do blah, blah, blah.
Never going there.
It's so easy to sit and be like, I would just do these things. And then now looking back, it's like I was sitting on the couch next to you, next to him. And it's like, I'm saying these things, but I'm not even processing that that's me in it. Right. So I think the biggest thing is that we have so many people who sit back and judge and be like, why didn't you leave? Or why didn't you do these things? Or there's all these resources out there for you. But if you don't understand yourself, that you're in that space, you can talk to your blue in the face and you're not going to hear it, because if you believe that you are in a safe space, if you're believing that this is a good, healthy dynamic, or this is just how it is.
Who's going to convince you?
You chalk it up to, oh, well, he had a hard day at work, and, he's got a high pressure job, all these other things. Right. And then it just gets to just be like, this is just your normal life. Right. So I think the biggest thing for me was that I pushed through the fact that, I kept on with the work that I was doing, which was my holistic practice. And because I was in a holistic practice, I was always led into different forms of like personal or professional development, which thank God I did, because it helped me to sort of peel back those layers and have the awareness to say, hey, you know what? I recognize some of these things. I recognize some of these things. And once you're out of that bubble, you get to see dynamics of different people and realize that, hey, I don't have that here.
Mhm.
So eventually the layers start to peel away a little bit, and you get a little bit more understanding and a little bit more confidence to say, hey, you know what? This doesn't feel good. This
Right.
isn't feeling good for me anymore. And then you start to realize that, oh shit, this is not where I want to be. And so then it's a matter of like, okay, now what are my next steps? Now I've checked out. What are my next steps to physically move forward?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is just to not, for anybody who's watching somebody in that dynamic, or if you're in that dynamic, not to judge yourself and not to judge other people and not to question,
Right.
why didn't you leave? Or what? It's just to be there and to say, hey, you know what? Whenever you're ready, I'm here.
I'm here. Yeah.
And if you're cool with where you're at, that's okay too.
Sure.
Right. But just to have the awareness that, you know what, there's other options out there. Right. And it's not a matter of just, you've made your commitment, right? We always have this idea of like, oh, we've made this commitment to ourselves and
Right.
and to one another and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Right. But what's the commitment that you made to yourself?
Mm.
Right. We put so much stake into what I've told this person versus what do I want for myself? How am I going to stand up for myself, my own mental health, and say, hey, you know what? This is not in alignment with me anymore. And
Right.
I have the ability to say, hey, you know what? People change. Everything's shifting, as we always do. And I am not in alignment with this anymore. I've learned my lessons and now I need to move.
Moving
Right.
on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I have no regrets. I have no regrets for that period of time. And yeah, like I said, when I left and became a men's advocate, people are like, what? Like, what are you doing? But I mean, that's that's a story for another day. But yeah, it's
Sure.
it's where I needed to be. And it was,
what was the moment, the realization for you? Was it somebody coming up to you, or did you're watching CSI and all of a sudden, boom, you realized it? Or
you know what, I had when I started doing the modeling, it would have been a year before I actually left.
Okay.
And I started doing the modeling with this friend of mine, and we had started. He kind of became my confidant, and I was able to, because I really didn't have anybody that I could talk to about this, because everything I was so closed off. Like my family and friends and stuff were who I spent my time with, and in general, who I communicated with or what I communicated was all very monitored. So, I mean, this was a very secretive sort of confidant that I had. And it was just like, I remember one day, and I can literally say the date that it was. It was the Monday before I actually told him on that Saturday that I was leaving. And I remember saying to him, we're having a conversation, and it was, he had done something, like he had hit something or thrown something or whatever, and kids were crying, and it was just the house was just a disaster. And I remember messaging him and saying, like, I don't know how long I can do this for. Like, I don't know how, like, this is just so stressful and blah, blah, blah. And he finally just said to me, it was just one question. He says, why don't you divorce him? Like, what's holding you there?
Right.
And it was just a simple question of what's holding you there. And I was like, nobody had ever asked me that. And I think even if somebody had asked me that prior to it, it wouldn't have landed. Like, it landed there. Yeah, in that moment. And I remember that was on the Monday, and by Saturday I had told him I'm leaving, and this is it. And within 3 months I had moved into my own home and took my boys with me, and that was it. But yeah, it was just, like I said, I mean, somebody could have asked me that at any point prior to it, but it wouldn't have landed. But it was just like right timing, and I heard it. And I was like, okay, I deserve better, and my boys deserve better. They need to see, that women do not get treated this way, and that men don't act this way. Like, healthy, masculine males do not act in this manner.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. It's like, oh shit, I am allowing this to happen. Not just to me. It wasn't even about me anymore. It was about, like, my boys are seeing this, and it's my responsibility. If nobody else is taking responsibility, I have to do something.
They're learning the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
One piece of encouragement to anybody stuck out there would be or looking at somebody is just to keep asking those questions, right? And just to be there when things eventually do come to that bottom point, right? Like,
I think just having support and non-judgment is the biggest thing. So
it's tough stuff to go through, and I don't think anybody wishes that for anybody, because it's hard, right? Like you don't just wake up and all of a sudden you realize that maybe I should have left sooner. Some people are, and maybe I didn't need to get abused that bad, but it's something that we definitely need to address at some point in life, because you don't want to be old and wishing you'd made a change something sooner, right? So
exactly.
what are some things that once you started guessing, once you moved out and took the boys and started life again, got into more modeling and coaching and that kind of thing, what are some of the practices, the things you do in your life to kind of keep your headspace in the right place, or growth mindset and that kind of thing?
Well, like I said before, when I was prior to leaving, I had sort of spent a lot of years in the personal and professional development, just in different ways. And I think that's always been my go-to as far as like self-help and whatnot, is I always been reaching out to coaches and different things like that. So that's always been my way. Like instead of like the traditional counseling, I've always kind of sought out people who I felt in alignment with, or they had what I wanted. There was some energy about them that I wanted. So I always went and sought out, what it is that they have. And the biggest thing I found is that anybody I reached out to, I've learned that they've gone through similar stories. Everybody's got their story of like what was your rock bottom and how did you come out of it? Yes. And I think that's what aligned me to all of these different coaches and different mentors in my life is a matter of like understanding that, you didn't just go to university or go to college or whatever and just get this life coaching degree and all of a sudden you just like have all the answers, right? Yeah. It's people who have hit rock bottom and then thought, oh shit, I need to get myself out. And how am I going to do that? So then I now can take these pieces and show it to other people, right? So yeah, I feel like there's that, and I did yoga teacher training, and there was a lot of healing that came with that as well. And I did that actually when I was still married. I'd gone to Costa Rica, I'd gone to Mexico, and I'd done my training there. And those were like 7 days of like fully immersed in that mindset. So it was really
good energy.
A turning point for me. Yeah, it was you're surrounded by all of these like-minded people who are supporting you on your journey. And so I've always thought out things like that, like different mentors and coaches and things that I had a passion for and was able to sort of utilize that and become part of my offerings and part of my business, is to utilize all of those things that I learned from and techniques and whatnot to keep myself in check, as well as being able to teach it to my clients as well. It was like meditation and things like that.
So have you done the holistic training and coaching and that kind of stuff? Like, is that something you've done for a long time, or did you come into that towards the end of your marriage? Or
I've always I started my holistic practice, like I said, 25 years ago. Okay. So that would have been in my like early 20s. Okay. So my holistic practice started out mainly as like doing massage, reflexology, Reiki, I think were the first few things that I did. Okay. But ever since then, I always sort of added different modalities to my work. And then even like in my massage, I would learn different techniques. No matter where I traveled around the world, I would always pick up different pieces and sort of incorporate that. And I was incorporating in energy work into the massage. And I actually always found that for me, like when I started doing my practice, I always worked by myself. I always worked in my own space, and I was never in a spa industry because it was more like the holistic aspect. Yep. So I was never like in a spa setting. So I never knew for the longest time that, and it's funny to say this, but like I didn't really realize that massages and stuff were mostly women. Like mostly women came for these services because I always had mostly men.
Right.
Men, I would like for like my 25 years, majority of people, I would say it was like 60-40, maybe it's like 80-20 now of men who I would come to me.
Right.
And it always ended up being like they would come for massage, but then we'd have tea after and we would just talk. So it was always like some kind of talk therapy has always been part of it.
Wow.
And then just after I left and became the men's advocate, then I started realizing that, okay, there's actually people actually do this for a living. This is actually coaching.
Right.
So it's not just, like have a massage and then come and sit down and have tea. Not everybody does that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. But yeah, like men just feel very comfortable and safe opening up to me and allowing themselves to be vulnerable. And so yeah, the coaching just sort of, has always been there, but I just didn't put a label on it. And then as time went on over the last few years, it just became like, okay, this is actually what I'm doing. And specifically the sex and relationship aspect of it, and how that's directly linked to our childhood traumas, and specifically men and boys. Again, it becomes linked to my ex, again, as far as what was his upbringing, what are my boys now viewing, and what's their upbringing going to reflect when they become older? Are they going to understand the whole intimacy piece? And intimacy begins with yourself, all of these things. So like I say, this is all so full circle, and I love how it all comes together. Everything connects. And it's like all the puzzle pieces are coming together to build this beautiful picture. Yeah. It's been really cool. So, cool. Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit before about your boys watching good masculine energy and the growth in that piece. And maybe it's an ego boost. I'm kind of curious what that looks like for men. What is good masculine energy, and how do you describe that and see that, or negative for that matter?
So this is probably sometimes like an unpopular opinion, just because there's so many feminists in today's world. But for me, I still go by the traditional roles of men and women in the sense that if a man leads a relationship, and he does so because it's a natural primal instinct to take the lead, right? Whether you're out in nature or at home. And I don't mean that women have to sit home and wash dishes and be barefoot pregnant, but it's a matter of like, in general, the man is going to be the one to lead. And in order for him to be the leader in the relationship, the woman needs to be in her feminine. And we're finding so many women nowadays who were like pushing for like, the independence and taking care of themselves and not wanting a man to open the door and all of these things. So we're pushing our men into these very wounded feminine spaces where they're like, I don't even, am I going to get, am I able to like open the door for you? Am I able to buy your dinner for you? Am I able to, create these boundaries, or am I going to get condemned for that? Right. So it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So for me, it's like, a woman needs to understand what her role is as a feminine. And when I say that, women are often jump down and say, hey, you know what? I'm a strong woman, blah, blah, blah. I can do all these things by myself. Nobody's doubting anybody's ability to do these things. I can do a lot. I can do I'm a farm girl. I can do a lot of shit, right? I can go and chop wood if I need to. But if there's a man around, you bet your ass he's going to go there and do it, because I'm not allowing myself to go there. Because that's his role, right? And I teach my boys this too. It's like, this is your role as a masculine man, is to lead this. These are your jobs to do, and these are my jobs to do. That means that when you're in that role, when a man is in that role, it allows me to say, okay, now I'm going to be in my feminine. That means that when I'm in my feminine, it pushes you up into your masculine, and when you're in your masculine, it helps me to feel safe and secure, knowing that things are being taken care of. And it's just, I mean, again, that's a whole other podcast. We can get into all of that, but it's just a matter of understanding what our roles are. And men are very decisive, very, they can compartmentalize, and they can do black and white, and they need to know what their role is. They need to know that they're action oriented. They need to know, what am I going to go there and do so that I can come back to you and show you what I've done. Right? Women are very flowy. We're organic we're supposed to be soft and in our energy, and we are very chaotic, and we are so, full of wisdom and knowledge. But it's just a matter of having this understanding that there's nobody who's weak or stronger than the other person. It's just a matter of, we need the two pieces to connect. And that's even if you're in a male-male relationship, male-female relationship, we all have a masculine and feminine within us. One of them is going to be stronger than the other. Which role are you going to play? Which role am I going to play? And we need to understand that and communicate what our roles are to feel safe and understood and communicate within a relationship.
Right.
So,
it brings a
Yeah.
lot more synergy and probably peace in life when you sort those out, right? So
It does, yeah.
working with some different guys over the years, we actually have quite a few men that listen to this podcast, so they're probably interested now that you've gone down that road. What are some things if maybe they're in a relationship or they're in a space where they're not really sure how to take the lead, or what roles should they be playing? Do you coach people on those kind of ideas, where to get started and how to make that shift? Or
The biggest thing I think I would say is to really understand communication. Like the communication is key because, and I've said this so many times. I mean, like there's no prerequisite to getting married. There's no prerequisite to being in a committed relationship. You're just like, oh, you're really cool. So are you? Okay, cool. Like, let's get together and just,
yeah,
have babies and have this life. But then
yeah,
meanwhile, you're pulling apart as soon as like the honeymoon stage kind of dissipates a little
phase,
bit.
yeah,
Then we're like looking elsewhere. We're communicating with other people that we see online, or we see this and we want this, but it's like, I can't tell my partner these things because what if she looks at me differently? What if she
right,
thinks I'm, all of these other things, right? What if there's judgment?
yeah,
Well, don't you think that's something that you should be done ahead of time, is like making sure that you can just say, hey, you know what? This is who I am. And very clearly learn to communicate, not to say that everything's going to come out on day one or even in the first, little bit of your relationship, but learn the basic communication styles so that
sure,
you can effectively have that back and forth with your partner. So when things do come up, it's like, okay, hey, I'm just going to do a check-in right now. How are you feeling? Or these are things I'm thinking about. What do you think about this? So that you know and you understand, what does this mean? It's nothing personal. I'm not leaving you. I just want to know that I can feel safe expressing these things to you, and you're not going to leave me.
yeah.
Right. So I think the biggest thing for men, I mean, men just have it a lot harder. And I know women are going to be on here probably.
Thank you. I'll take
Again,
that
it's an
where I get
unpopular opinion,
it.
but I think that men have been given the short end of the stick because they're with the whole feminist movement in the 70s, and those are our parents, right? Those are our
Sure.
parents who had that sort of. I know my mom would have been like whatever 18 in like the 1970s, right? So
Sure.
like they would have been influenced by this whole feminist movement. And I think the whole idea of the feminist movement initially was fairness. I get that.
Absolutely.
But it went, like, somebody just took that and ran so
Too
far
far.
off into that field with it, and it just sort of grew, right? So nowadays, when people say that they're a feminist, that means that, it means many things for different people. But in the end, I think that the men have gotten the short end of the stick and saying that, men can't be abused, men can't be taken advantage of, men can't, be manipulated. Of course they can. We're all human beings, right? And if these men are coming in and trying to take the lead in a relationship, and the woman is not allowing it to happen, and then you're both butting heads because you're both in a masculine energy, what's going to happen? Your partner is either going to go down into the very soft, wounded feminine space, or he's going to be above you and be an aggressive, manipulative, controlling, probably abusive man, because he's trying. It's like two deers, right?
Yeah, pushing head
You
butting.
can't. It's like the two things are out there fighting. One of them it's natural and normal. You're going to fight it out until they say, okay, I'm going to walk away. You're in charge.
Yeah.
It's just normal, right?
Enough.
And that's what we have to do, is that men just need to be able to learn how to take the lead in the sense of understanding who you are.
Yep.
What is your role as a masculine? How do you communicate your feelings and your needs in a way that she's going to understand? And she needs to understand, okay, these are the things that you need, and I need to be able to step off and be, not be nagging and not be doing all these things. I need to respect you as the leader of this family or in this relationship. And by doing that and saying, hey, you know what, I respect you, that doesn't mean that you're backing down and saying, okay, I'm the weak woman.
Right.
And it just means that I respect this man. And if I want respect back, I need to respect him. And he's going to, in turn, respect who I am. And then we're going to be able to communicate our needs to one another. We're not going to be leaving and going to somebody else and starting these relationships. Like, there's so many situationships online right now, like where people are like, it's like, I'm not leaving my wife, but I'm going to talk to you, and I talk to you, and I talk to you because I can't talk to her.
Yeah.
And it's like, talk to me, that's fine, but I'll charge you, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a transaction here, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I would rather just give you some communication skills so you can bring it back to your partner and say, hey, this is what we need to do, because you're not solving anything by just staying there physically and then being mentally elsewhere. That doesn't do anybody any good, right?
Right.
Yeah. I could go down a rabbit hole with this. When I start talking about like men stuff, I get super passionate and I just start like really getting into it, but I digress.
No worries. I am going to ask one for the lady side, just to keep it fair.
Okay.
If you're seeing or if there's a lady out there and she's listening to this and she likes what you're saying, but she's forced kind of into the masculine right now, where her man is playing Xbox or whatever it is. Do you have any quick advice for her? What would be something she could do to move somebody out of that?
What I always say is that, and I have some women who say that as well. It's like, oh, my partner does these things, so I'm forced to do these things. Yeah. What I always say is, like, if it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. Focus on yourself, because if we're always looking outside of ourselves and trying to change other people, it's outside stuff. It's taking it away from myself and giving control to another person, giving power to another person. Take control and take power over yourself. Yeah. Be so concerned with what you are doing. And I guarantee, if you allow yourself to be in your feminine, in a healthy, feminine, balanced energy, your partner will have no choice but to move up into into masculine energy. It's just dynamics.
Cool.
It's just how it goes. And if he doesn't do it, then that's when you start to have the communication and say, hey, you know what? These are my needs. And never come and blame and say, hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And my girlfriend's husband does all these things. Why aren't you doing it? That just comes from a space of blame. It comes from a space of like, I know if somebody were to do that to me, I instead of getting me to say, oh, okay, great, yeah, I'll do all these things for you. Instead, it's going to be like, I'm not doing anything now. Right. I'm just going to sit back and do absolutely nothing because you just pissed me off. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So yeah, it goes on. It goes in both ways. I mean, we all need to understand what our boundaries are, what our roles are, and read some books. There's honestly no excuse anymore for like what's on social media. There's so much access to good content that if your social media is full of memes or whatever, no shade, but look into some of those things, right?
Yeah.
Do some things that don't cost money or that don't cost a lot of money. Go to the library, get some books, download some audiobooks or whatever, reach out to a coach, maybe do like a free masterclass, anything like that. There's so much out there that is accessible no matter what where you're at.
Yeah. So cool. That's good. That's awesome advice. And all else fails, they can call you, right? And I'm sure. Exactly. Do you have anybody kind of mentoring, inspiring, coaching you, whether it's a podcast, somebody you're listening to, books, anything that you'd recommend that you've been going through right recently? Or
on Instagram, one of the accounts that I follow, his name is Jake Woodard, and yeah, so I would definitely, we can like link it after in the podcast, but I can't remember if it's Jake Woodard _, but he speaks to the masculine and feminine energies a lot. Nice. And I think most recently he got married. So I think his wife sort of helps with some of those different dynamics in there. Rainier Wild is another great one who I follow on Instagram. He's really great. And actually he's going to be on my podcast in hopefully this fall. We're going to have him on here. So yeah. And as far as like women, there's lots of different like sex therapists and human dynamics people on there. You just got to type it in and just, if you love somebody, if there's a post that you love on Instagram, I always go into like, who are they following or who are they tagging in some of their posts, and just sort of allow that to be like, okay, now I'm going to just sort of envelop myself in all of this stuff. And if it starts to be not in alignment with you anymore, shift it up. The next one. But yeah.
That's awesome advice. Yeah, I think that's really practical too, because people need that the real deal stuff, right? So
yeah, and it's free, right? That way you can just test out lots of different content and see what works for you.
Yeah, great idea. Celina, in the next few years, what are the plans? More modeling, more coaching, watching the boys grow up?
Definitely in the next few years. I have I've sort of gotten more into like the sex coaching part of it. And so the next few years, I can see myself like doing like, I would love to do like a massive retreat for women, because I focus so much on men. It's like I would like for the women to hear, like, it's one thing to be giving all this information to one half of a couple, whether it be a single man or in a partnership, but it's like I want the women to also be able to hear this information. And so what I would love to do is create a large retreat, and then just more modeling and just sort of diving more into my work. And I'm kind of leaning into like sort of some more body work, like dominatrix, things like that are, and it's funny because every time that people hear like sex therapy and dominatrix stuff, they always think about sex and that's all really fun and cool and stuff, but it's really not to say it's not fun and cool, but it's like, it's not literally the physical pieces. It's literally about like tapping into like the feeling. It is. Yeah. It's about creating that nurturing and that sense of safety for a person to explore who it is that they are and what it is that they are looking for. And, when these men who are, a lot of the men that come to me are very much, and they're strong, masculine, and they're making decisions all the time, and they're big companies, and these, they're all of these responsibilities and pressures on them. So at the end of the day, sometimes I just want to be like, you know what, I just want to be taken care of. And so this is an opportunity to explore that different, whether it be different kinks or different things like that, with no judgment, no shame, and just, just in a safe space. So kind of leaning more into those types of things in the next couple of years. So
sure. Awesome.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to get track there. I'm sure there's a lot of people needing that help and that support, right?
Yeah.
So that's good to fill that void for people. So how do people get a hold of you? If they want to follow you, or if they want to reach out or book some sessions with you?
Okay, so on my website, it's www.celinaepp.com. Instagram, it's I am Celina Epp, and then I also have White Cloud on Instagram as well, which is my spa page, and then just on Facebook under Celina Epp. So people can follow me on there, or they can, most of my content is shared between Instagram and Facebook. So it's easy to find me.
Yeah, good. Celina Epp, perfect. The last one is, if those social handles blow up and you end up with 1 million followers overnight, what is the one big message you want to share with all of those people?
I think the biggest thing I'd like to share is just to really, and I know people hear this all the time, it's like really getting to know yourself. And people, I've heard that from myself for years, and it didn't really land. Like, what does that really mean? Right. Yeah. So my biggest thing is taking the time to learn who you are and understanding that self-intimacy. And like I say, I talk to my boys about it now, about if you know what your boundaries are, what you're willing to do, not willing to do, what you stand for, and what you are, how do you feel about certain things, understanding that and being able to really educate yourself and sort of dip your toe into a lot of different areas so that you understand how does this work for me? What do I feel about this? Right. Yeah. And just getting different perspectives. So all of these things and talking to people, having different conversations and being open to different perspectives is going to broaden your horizons, but it's also going to give you a deeper sense of intimacy and deeper sense of self, because once you expose yourself to all of these different things and you get to say, hey, you know what, this is my opinion on this, or this is my opinion on this, or I'm open to hearing about it. And all of these things, what it's going to do is going to help you to build confidence in who you are, because you know where you stand. And whether it be in modeling or in coaching or in a relationship or anything like that, that confidence is what's going to come forward, because you're going to be able to communicate what you desire, where you stand on things, what your perspective is. And if nothing else, it gives you an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. Communication, key thing for all of us, I think. A good message, I think, from your entire talk tonight. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate that, Celina. And I know we look forward to hearing more about your modeling and some of the coaching success. And maybe we'll talk more detailed about masculine stuff down the road someplace. I'd like my ego boosted again, so we'll talk about that. But appreciate the time tonight anyway. So
all right, thank you, Ben. It was great having me on tonight.
Hey there, really appreciate you joining the Influencer Insights podcast today. If you've enjoyed this episode, I just would ask that you share it with a friend and give the video a like, or the podcast a rating, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite other player anywhere else. That really helps us share the message and grow this community as well. So Thanks for that. Take care. Great.